name is Ken Boyer. My parents were Bob and Edith Boyer. They joined this church in December of 1948, and the same day they joined the church, I was baptized in this church. I was about 15 months old. Dad was in the Army, stationed at Fort Meade, and Mom and I had moved here with him in March of 1948 when I was 6 or 7 months old. So that's how long I have been associated with the church.
Yeah.
I think the things that stand out most in my memory are Sunday school and family fellowship time. That was, Sunday school was in the old building. When you look at the plot down there now on 5th and Main, I remember as a kid thinking that, boy, this is a really big building. But when you go by there now, it just seems so small to realize that the church and behind it the Sunday school building. But so much of my first memories of the church take place in that Sunday school building, because that's where Sunday school classes were. We had these little like alcoves off on the side of the main room, and then there was a room in the back where the younger kids were that had this wall that went up, and then the top, I don't know, 3 feet were all glass that let light through into the main room from the back side of the building. So the old building, I think one other thing that stands out in my memory is the cornerstone that used to be right next to the steps up at the front of the church, erected in 1899, I think. I don't remember, after the fire that burned it down. And just lots of kids, lots of older people, the old residents of Laurel. One in particular was Robert Sadler, who, if you know Sadler's on Main Street, that's the home where he lived, and he was maybe 2 doors from the church, and we were probably the next closest people. We lived right down on Post Office Avenue, so we just would walk up the hill over a block, and we were at church and Sunday school. He took pictures all the time, and for many years he was the oldest member of the church. He'd been around the longest. I remember at the groundbreaking out here, I go back that far, the groundbreaking for the original building, he was one of the ones who put the spade in the ground because he was the oldest member of the church.
Okay.
Family fellowship was a church potluck supper about once a month. I think it was Friday nights, either Friday or Saturday night, and all the people in the church, families and everything, would come to the Sunday school building, and or fellowship hall, whatever they called it, and it was just a big time for the whole church to get together. Of course, we weren't 200 members or whatever back then. It was smaller, but we would have it there in the church, or sometimes during the summer we would go out to Rocky Gorge or somewhere like that. We would go to Alpine Beach or Triton Beach. There were some outings for family fellowship where we went over to the beaches on the bay back in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
Where we lived on Post Office Avenue, we lived over Ray and Dell Bauer. They were our landlady and landlord, and Ray was the treasurer of the church for many years, and Dell was the organist. So between those two and Mom, I guess I heard a lot. Ray and I heard a lot of the business of the church, and I remember hearing that the manse on Stanley Place was falling down. It was never going to last. That's where the office for the church was, and all that. Well, the house is still standing, and we're talking 60 years later. So, but yeah, I remember that the men of the church pretty much built the manse.
Right.
And I remember that construction going on. The groundbreaking for the church itself, I remember very well. It was kind of a cloudy, cool day. See, it was Jim Cross, Scott Birdsong, myself, see, the Henthorne brothers, maybe 1 or 2 others. We had a little brass group, and we played A Mighty Fortress Is Our God. And the choirs, the youth choir, maybe it was junior choir, I don't remember which one, probably junior choir we sang, because that was 60, 61, I think, when the ground was broken, because the manse was built in 59, I think.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And so it was quite an event. It was everybody in the church was here. Like I say, Mr. Sadler, he took one of the spades of earth. I think maybe one of the youngest members of the church did, someone who had just joined, you know, a high school kid, and I don't remember who that might have been. I think probably the clerk of the session. I know Reverend Clayman did. So that's why I remember that day. Now, from our family point of view, we needed a ride up because my mom didn't drive. Whereas when we were down at 5th and Main, we could always walk.
Right.
So when we moved up here, when Dad was on tour, we had to find a way to get here.
Oh,
So
okay.
it was the Bowers or somebody we would ride up with, but the amount of room that we had when we moved here, I think just the modernness of the building, because the old church was built in the late 19th century. The Sunday school building was built in the early 20s, creaky old wood floors and all that. But to come up here to a modern building where we had room and all that, and it was quite something. And of course, you know, there were more room for more activities. The Boy Scouts met up here, and I was in the Boy Scouts at the time. Was in the choir, as were the other three.
Right.
And just it was a sense of, wow, we're moving in, we're moving up, we're becoming modern.
It's aside from what you were talking about on the church, I never realized that Edie didn't know how to drive at one time. I mean,
Yeah.
I only knew her as a driving woman.
She didn't learn to drive until after Dad died. She got her license when she was 60 years old.
Really?
Yes. She never even drove a tractor on the farm growing up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. That's just an aside, I realize. But I know your mom spent a lot of time up here at the church.
Yes, the LPC was her rock. Without LPC, I don't know that we'd have stayed here in Maryland, or that Dad would have stayed in the Army, that we wouldn't have moved back. But it became our family when we were here. You know, that was it. You know, that Jim and Scott and their siblings are like cousins to me. Their parents, speaking of cousins. And it was just, it was like a big family, even more so than